Objective of this lesson is to create an input area to interact with the user and welcome them to the page. So the user comes to your web page and it says, what is your name, with a submit button. So you enter in a name, and we're also going to be checking to see to make sure that the length of the name is going to be larger than 3. And if it's not, then we're going to get this message that says name length must be 3+ characters. So let's update this and add in a length that's going to be larger than 3+ characters. So entering in the name, and then we get our welcome message. So welcome to the site, Laurence Svekis, and that's what the code project is going to be doing within this lesson. We've got the code editor on the left-hand side. We've added in some HTML. So we've got an area where we can ask a question, and this can also serve as an output area. So giving a class of output, an input, and a button. So let's make things happen with JavaScript, linking to the script file as a source. I've got a JavaScript file that I'm going to just call app.js, and we'll select that content from the HTML and make it interactive. So right now when we click the button, nothing happens. We also want to get the input from the input area and also update the output content within the output display to display the welcome message of the user's name. So selecting in JavaScript, so first of all we're going to select the elements that we want to use, and using the document query selector, select the element, and the first element that we want is the class of output. So that's currently where we have what is your name. We're going to be selecting that and updating it. So next we have the user value, and this is coming from the input element. So again, using the document query selector, we're going to select the element, the input element. And if you have more than one input element, you can be more specific, specifying it by the name. So selecting it and then bracketing and then selecting the name and then whatever we have for the name of it. And in this case, we've got a value for username of the name of the input. So add that in within the quotes. And I am doing a single quote on the outside and a double quote on the inside. So depending on how you're doing your quotes, you might have it in a reverse order. And then the next item that we want to select is the button. And this is where we're going to create the interaction for the page element. So selecting the button, and we only just have the one button on the page, so we'll just select it by its element name. And then for the button, we're going to add an event listener. So using the onClick, selecting the click event, and then we're going to run an anonymous function whenever the button gets clicked. So using the arrow format and having a function on the other side. You can also create a function, give it a name. So button clicked, and then this function can run as well. So you can do it both ways, where you can assign a value of button clicked, or you can just use the anonymous function whenever the button gets clicked. So both will work the same way. So what we want to do is when the button gets clicked, we want to first of all make sure that there is a value for the user name. So we'll check to see if the value and the length of it is going to be greater than 3. So we'll look and make sure that the length is greater than the 3. If it's not greater than 3, then we want to output and add to the area. So maybe we want to just update output and just say, please enter in a username that's longer than. So we'll add select output, and we can set the text content of this. So we're not updating any of the HTML. So that will just tell the user that there's been an error, and we're just going to do an output error. So if the name is not larger than the length of 3, then if the value of this is not greater than the length of 3, then we want to throw an error. And we'll update this to be less than 3. So user value, and let's update the style and set the background, the border, and I'll set it to be the border color will set to be red. So let's see what happens when we do a submit. So it says the name length must be 3+ characters. If we do have a length that's larger than the 3 characters, then we're okay. So otherwise it's going to throw it and send it to red. I'm going to update the default value of the border, and I'll set that to be black. So that way we can easier switch it back, or you can use a hex value. So if that one's a little bit too dark, we can use a lighter hex value for the border. So next up, let's select, and when the button gets clicked, then now that we know that the length is not less than 3, so it's greater than 3, this is where we can take action, and I'll just move this to be under the else. So if it's not greater than 3, then we're going to throw the error. And if it is greater than 3, then we're going to get the value, and we'll create our welcome message. So this is going to be the message that we want to output. And I'm using the backticks. So it'll say welcome to the site, and then whatever the value is we have for the username. So this is the template literal. So we're getting whatever we've got, the value that we've captured for the username, and that's going to be output as a variable for the message. And then we can take the output and update the text content of the element to whatever the message is that we want to add to the page. So let's try that again, where we type in test. So now we've got this welcome to the site test. If you add in your name, welcome to the site. And basically it will output whatever value we've got for the input field, and it's going to add that to the page within the output element. So we also want to remove out that button and the input field. So we can do this by adding and updating some of the content on the page. So we've already got them selected, so we can update the styles of those elements. So selecting the element and then style, and set that to display, and then display none. And you can do that for both of them. So this will hide both the button and that input field, and set them to display as none. So length must be larger than 3. If we do enter in a length larger than 3, then we get the welcome message being output to the page, and that hides the input elements. So you can also open up within the DevTools the code inspector and check out within the elements. So these elements are still on the page, but their display settings have now been set to none. That's why we're not able to see them. So they're both set to none, and we can only see the output area. So that's how you can create a quick welcome message to the user whenever they're visiting your web page.